What you want to use on your first step after you've got your wood stained and prepped is a sealer. Now you can use a package sealer. Pettit does two of them, super dry sealer and clear sealer. One is a chlorinated rubber base, the other is an acrylic. Both of them are acceptable on any type of wood. Where the super dry sealer is actually preferred is if you're doing a teak application. It can be used on all types of wood, but it does dry quickly. Teak is a very oily wood, and it tends to set up before the oils infiltrate into the cure of the product. So this is a superior sealer for teak.
So super dry.
What the job of the sealers do is they are very thin in viscosity. They have extra vehicle, which drives it into the grain of the wood. It actually brings resin and product into the grain of the wood, and that stabilizes the substrate. One of the things that makes your varnish jobs fail is moisture penetration. If moisture gets into the wood and swells the wood, the varnish is brittle and non-flexible. The wood's going to move because it swells up. The varnish isn't. You're going to get classic separation of the film, crazing, and then eventually peeling. So it is important, if you fill this with sealer and get a lot of resin into your top surface of grain of wood, it literally displaces water and repels water penetration, which is very important to the longevity of your varnish job. So this is a step that you never want to skip. The other thing that can lead to that problem, as long as we're already into that, cracking and crazing, which is classic, it's caused from moisture penetration, is not enough product on your substrate. Varnishes work from a principle of you want to build a mill thickness of product above the substrate so that water actually evaporates before it gets into the wood, so the wood is stabilized and doesn't move. The secret with this type of a product is more is better. You don't want to over apply, and I'm going to show you later down the road what happens if you put too much product on at once, but there's a saturation point to that, but it's good to add a lot of product on the surface because we want to build up a mill thickness so that that water evaporates. If you're using a product like we mentioned earlier in the talk, the polyurethanes, you can't really do that. They skin over on the top and trap solvents and orange peel and alligator, and you can't put those on heavy and deep. What you have to do is do multiple coats. But it is important that you build up mill thickness above your substrate. And putting on a heavy coat with a big bristle brush bristle's going to hold a lot more product. You're going to get more per application on than you would with foam. But because we're inexpensive and easy to toss away with foam, today we're going to demonstrate with foam. And there's nothing wrong with using foam, just if you realize that you have to do more coats because you're not putting on as much product. The first step on any of these applications, except for the sealer, is to take a cone strainer and strain it into a separate clean bucket for application. And you could use a pair of used ladies' nylons as a perfect strainer if you don't have a cone paint strainer. But you should always strain your varnish, and what that does is take any nimby-jimbies or particles or things from the lip of the can, these dirty cans I have here, it strains that out of your varnish so it doesn't end up in your finished product. Okay. After you've got it all coated on there, your last technique is with the brush of the grain and gently tipping off any bubbles and any surface imperfections. That's very typical. Now what that honestly is a lot of it will bleed off in solvent. Those little bubbles will burst and
Have enough on there?
it will self-level.
Yeah, there is a lot of bubbles on there.
Don't worry about it. In your sealer applications, again, what you're trying to do is fill the grain. And you probably can tell with your finished product there, if you hold it up in the light right, you can see where the liquid actually got the wood to swell in some places, and the grain raises in some areas and doesn't in others, so that you have actually a less than smooth surface now, because the grain has been raised by the penetration of the sealer. They'll not all of them, but most of them will bleed off in solvent. VOC, that stands for volatile organic compound. That's a solvent that's in the paint. That's it releasing from the product. That's how it cures. It's going to go off into the atmosphere. Now, if you put on too heavy a coating, what tends to happen with those is they take longer to work their way out, and when they do leave, the film is already starting to cure, so you don't get that self-leveling quality, and you get what we call an orange peel finish, less than smooth finish, and that comes from over-application. That's the first indication of putting on too much at once.